From inside a relic of the Cold War, an underground bunker at the Denver Federal Center, FEMA is working in concert with cities across the state to get communities prepared for this, an unexpected emergency in which you and your neighbors are the first responders. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Conversation today. A look at an effort underway in our communities that you may not even be aware of. A collection of agencies working in concert to help you get to know the people who live around you so that in the event of an unspecified catastrophe, you can incorporate the help of your neighbors to save lives. Our conversation begins today in a facility you may know nothing about, where workers who are part of this project do their jobs some 25 feet underground. This is the entry to Building 710, more affectionately known as the Bunker, a complex built entirely underground. Down these long tubular steel hallways are the offices of a group of government workers long separated from the days of the Cold War for which the facility was built. Now, instead of just managing disasters,
we like to prevent disasters. We like to be prepared for them, and we like to mitigate them.
Mike Hillenberg is a FEMA employee, one of hundreds working in FEMA District 8. Behind the old blast doors and offices surrounding the new high-tech command center, government specialists like Mike are reshaping part of the FEMA mission around you and your neighbors.
In the first 72 hours after an event, you may not get an immediate assistance. And the best thing is to be able to knock on your neighbor's door, or better yet, have your neighbor knock on your door and say, "Are you okay?"
The photos from the bunker's earlier days as a Cold War fortress stand in sharp contrast to the work now taking shape here. FEMA still steps in floods, fires, natural failures of every description, but the current emphasis is on how to encourage neighbors to help other neighbors, stepping up in those often critical first hours when local responders are overwhelmed and resources are stretched.
Do you know how to do a tourniquet? If you don't even have a tourniquet, do you know how to make one?
FEMA's Katrina Woodhams says you can learn that skill in a program like this one.
1, 2, 3, lift.
A community emergency response training course, also known as CERT, that teaches civilians vital emergency skills.
People go into shock. A lot of times people die from shock because there's no one there reminding them it's going to be okay.
Emergency responders now want you to be that person. Take a course, learn a skill, know your neighbors, save a life. The FEMA bunker, so unusual and so hidden, a lot of folks in our area not even aware that it is in existence. And it's something of a metaphor for our discussion today, old Cold War thinking versus New World program. Our guests today are Katrina Woodhams from FEMA, who you just saw in our piece. She's a community preparedness officer. To her left is Jesse Miller, Lakewood's emergency manager. And finally, Anessa Janes, who has absolutely the best title of anyone on the panel or in the room today. She is a community resilience coordinator for the city of Arvada. I can't wait to find out what all that does. But welcome all of you to our program today. So I'm in a room with a lot of adults, and we're having this discussion, 400 people, and I say to them, do you know that there is this place underground at the Federal Center in Denver, right 6th and Kipling, that is underground? It has its own water filtration system, it has its own filtered air, and the room exploded. No! Suddenly it was like a DIA conspiracy thing. No, this can't be happening and that can't be there. So my advice to all of you to open the show today is that in any of your conversations about this, you should just throw in that you know about this bunker and that you've spent some time there, and you will elevate your status immediately. It's just one of those remarkable things. But the same group of adults in this room, when we asked them about this program, did you know that this program is underway? Once again, complete disbelief that the government was actually working to turn schlubs like me, who pass out at the sight of blood, into first responders. And the first part of that effort is to help me to know my neighbors, to get better acquainted with the folks around me. So, Katrina, I thought I'd start with you today since you're named after a disaster. It's perfect. It's just perfect. Exactly. So tell me about the program. What is it? What is the mechanism? What is it you're trying to do? What is the heart of this program?
So essentially with community preparedness, you know, it's all about preparing the individual and being self-advocates for themselves and empowering them to access information and be aware of that information and really what are they going to do with that information. And so, you know, with previous events, the individual has been on their own, right?
Right.
And they're the ones that have been responding. They've also been the ones that spontaneously go out and give aid to their neighbors and families. And so logically it means that we should give them education and train them on what they can do because they are the first line of defense.
Right, exactly. And you said that maybe it would be a good idea if I learned how to do a tourniquet. Well, that poor person would just bleed it out. I'd be passed out right next to them. It's one of those things. Jesse, the cities like Lakewood have their own programs. So you structure this for communities. You have programs for them that they can plug into to make this happen.
Absolutely, yeah. So FEMA kind of sets the core curriculum that talks about a general emergency preparedness framework and disaster medical and search and rescue and all these things. It's upon the individual communities to take that curriculum and make it their own, make it unique to their community, speak specifically to the hazards that they face and the type of population that live in that community. So that's what we do here in the city, and Arvada does
and
as
Arvada
well.
as well. Then the community resilience coordinator steps in and sprinkles magic dust on it and makes it all. What is a community resilience coordinator, and how does that job plug into this?
Sure, well, thank you for asking. So my job in many ways is similar to what Jesse does. So I run our emergency management programs for our organization, making sure we have plans and procedures in place to prepare, respond, and recover from disasters. The community resilience piece is about focusing on neighboring as a key indicator of success after a disaster. And so in my job, I pair closely with our neighborhood services department at the city to come up with projects and engagement activities that will encourage neighboring that might not even be related to a disaster or an emergency, but still build really important social ties that help our community be stronger in the event of a shock or a stress.
And you know, in my group, and I think I told you this a moment ago, more than 50% of my group says they do not know their neighbors, or maybe they know one neighbor, but they don't know the rest of the street. Is that typical, do you think? Is that what you're finding as you go to recruit all these people?
I mean, I would say definitely the problem partially is access to information, but also we're less connected and in person and having meaningful relationships.
Everybody on their phone or their device.
That's right. So it's difficult to get people out there in the neighborhoods and even go and knock on the neighbor's door. Hi, my name is Katrina. How are you? And also those with disabilities. Do you know who may need more resources than you? And who doesn't have family around them? Like she said, social ties. You know, studies have said that people in their own social networks and who they trust more are going to do what they say.
Right. Yeah. Right. A lot of people in my group, as you mentioned, are totally disconnected from family. Well, they've moved here for jobs and what have you. So they drop into these neighborhoods and they're essentially new faces. That was a major question for me, by the way. How do you recruit a neighborhood? I think we were having a conversation about block parties. Yeah. Is that part of the community resilience magic that you work in?
Absolutely. So every neighborhood is at a different phase of readiness for these types of conversations. Some are ready to jump in and start talking about tourniquets and turning off their gas when there's a big event. Others just want to have fun. And we see that as an opening to start building those social ties, introducing kind of opportunities to leverage city resources, and then eventually have conversations about how they can prepare, learn CPR, et cetera.
So you have a party that really isn't related to emergency preparedness, but it's just to get everybody to know everybody.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. How do you go about saying, well, we'll do this neighborhood? That was another question. Who gets picked and who doesn't? Is my neighborhood on a list? How do you decide what neighborhood you're going to go into?
From the CERT perspective, we don't choose individual neighborhoods. We just do kind of a blanket, anybody in the city or elsewhere. We train people outside of Lakewood as well. Come to the course, learn everything, and then it's really that CERT philosophy of taking it back into your community. And, you know, we don't want to be the ones that are designating neighborhood by neighborhood. We'd like to train anybody and anyone who wants to come. Yeah. And then if you're empowered after this course, which a lot of people are, take it back to your neighborhood and do those kinds of things. Meet your neighbors, understand the risks of your community, and really put it to work. Because what we teach you in the classroom is great, but it only goes so far. It's upon you to really take it back into the community. Right. And I think that's a core concept of CERT, is that grassroots kind of, in the community kind of kind of movement.
You mentioned CERT. We have pictures of this, and we actually showed some of the CERT training to our group. And I have to tell you, it's really intense. I mean, I thought maybe it would be like a CPR class where everybody's around a dummy and we're all learning, which is so important. And a lot of people in our research group, they knew how to do CPR, but they looked at this and they went, oh my gosh. I mean, I have to make a tourniquet. I have to learn how to stop blood flow through a wound. I have to deal with a concussion. And you mentioned shock. You know, people in the CERT training were in shock, and they were teaching people how to deal with that. That's pretty high end, I think. Am I wrong? It's pretty high end. No, this is the resilience coordinator says. But I mean, at first glance, it's like, gee, this is a lot. But you say you can train it.
Yes, I think that anybody can learn how to have some simple skills to kind of help themselves and their neighbors get through a crisis, and that's really one of the key points of CERT.
People on stretchers, there were triage people. And I guess the key thing to remember here is that, as Jesse pointed out, first responders are going, if it's a large-scale catastrophe, they're going to be stretched. So people like me in my neighborhood become the first line of defense. That's what you're guessing.
Correct.
Yep. And so you're going to train me to be the person who goes and helps someone who needs immediate assistance, and really on a professional scale, not just, you know, let me call 911.
Yeah. And I would add that we're not guessing on this. So if you look at previous disasters, the tsunami in Japan and Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy, researchers have found that in communities where people know their neighbors, they know the names of their neighbors, and they even kind of say hello to them when they're walking their dogs in the morning, they tend to recover more quickly and more successfully than communities that are self-reporting that they don't have those social ties. So again, this is, you know, based on research and information about recovery, and so it really is focused work that this CERT team is doing.
And I would say it's not as intense. Once you get into the classroom and they teach you these techniques and tactics, it really becomes, you know, it's also repetitive. But they really teach you a great way to become more confident with what you can do with the search and rescue. You know, safety first. They are very, you know, adamant that we teach ourselves to be safe first and our families first, and then go out and assess the situation. And if it's too dangerous, then we don't go in, right? And so, you know, I think it's a great training. It's 24 hours. It can be spread out throughout, you know, months at a time, or even, you know, I did it within 3 days each Saturday. And so I think, you know, again, it gains confidence for ourselves to be more prepared.
Well, you have information.
And take action and be a resource for the community.
So tell me more about that. So the CERT training, it's a classroom first? I mean, how does it work? I mean, we saw video of the actual practice of, you know, with victims and people being triaged and what have you. But how does it work? If a neighborhood wants to get involved to this, they call you on. Oh, by the way, I should mention at the end of the program, we will show if you are interested in this, and you should be in your neighborhood, then we'll give everybody the resources, the websites they can go to get involved. But what is the process? So you said 3 Saturdays. Is it your program's the same? Do you start with a classroom? Is that how it begins?
Yes, we have an academy where folks can go to our website, see the dates, and sign up. And once you're in the academy, there's a weekly evening course where you learn kind of different areas of the CERT curriculum, and it culminates in kind of a big exercise at the end where you practice as a team all of the things you've learned. And in Arvada, our CERT team has an extra layer, so we have a team of CERT members who want to volunteer extra time and can pass additional background checks and have kind of special skills and a willingness, and they can actually be deployed by our city departments in the event of an emergency. So, for example, our police department may need some extra assistance with traffic control. Our fire protection district sometimes deploys this kind of CERT leadership group for their preparedness and smoke alarm blitz activity. So if you're interested in learning, CERT is a great way to start, and if you're interested in more, there is another level if you kind of really want to
so you can actually assist first responders.
Absolutely, and that's really the vision.
That's remarkable. I want to know, when you go into a neighborhood, for example, would we pick Jesse as the most able-bodied member in our because he's a big, strong guy with a lot of muscles that can move people, you know, not to diminish women in any way, but do you pick the most able-bodied in the neighborhood? Or how do you do that? Or is there a criteria for that?
No, I mean, there's no criteria. We take everybody. There's, you know, our kind of one of our mottos is there's a role for everybody. There's many, many things that CERT does, to include documentation and leadership and staging and logistics and everything else. And you don't need to be, you know, a big strapping man to do this kind of stuff. We have people of all shapes and sizes in our courses. We've got retired doctors, we've got mechanics, we've got teachers, you know, all forms, and they all fit in just fine, and we find a role for absolutely everybody.
People from every profession, and it all begins with a knock on the door. You've got to go meet people or get to the block party and get to know people.
Yeah.
You brought it up in the video, so now I have to ask. So Jesse's bleeding, and I don't have a tourniquet. You know, so in CERT training, I will learn how to make a tourniquet to stop his bleeding from whatever I've got at hand, a pin and a piece of my sleeve, or what? I mean, what do I do? I just put a block of wood in between his teeth and tell him to take a deep breath. I mean, I thought that would be a good thing that we could pass along today. How do you make a tourniquet out of nothing?
Well, you really want to look around and assess the situation and see what materials are there. We also would advocate for people getting their own tourniquets. I almost brought mine just to show. But
Shoot! I should have left on that.
But the CERT training essentially gives you that introductory technique to be able to understand what you need to do and just raising and elevating the arm. But there's also additional trainings that you can apply to the CERT training, such as Stop the Bleed, and it helps you with bleeding control, gives you 3 steps, you know, pressing onto the wound and using the tourniquet. So there are mix and match ways that you can provide additional training. So this is really an introductory to gain that confidence, I would say, for, you know, the individual to go, okay, yeah, I can do this. You know, thinking even a car accident. It doesn't necessarily have to be a big disaster. You think about the Las Vegas shooting. You know, they ran out of tourniquets there. And so, you know, if a public citizen has their own understanding of how to do that, I mean, you could save somebody's life.
Exactly. Because, again, first responders, well, even in a car wreck, they're not there right away. So there's things you can do that can help.
Yeah, that's what we tell everybody is our citizens are our first responders.
Right,
you are. If your house catches fire, you're going to be the first person.
But I want to know, is there a reluctance among people in neighborhoods to do this? I guess I'm wondering, do you hit walls of resistance with this, or are people generally open to it?
If they have taken the step to actually get their foot in the classroom and sign up for it, they're very much engaged. And one of the very first things we do is a little bit of an icebreaker, because we go back to that. People don't know their neighbors, and you're in a room with 20 or 30 people you've never met before. Nobody's particularly chatty, so we do some kind of icebreaker, get to know each other, because CERT focuses very much on teamwork and working together as a team. So that's one of the big things we try and push is, you know, you're going to be the first one on scene, so might as well train you up to the best of your ability. Right.
Yeah. And if you don't cooperate, we turn you into the community resilience coordinator, and then you're in serious trouble.
Send you to a block party.
How do you sell it initially when people contact you? I guess, well, is that the process? People contact you first, or are you out actively recruiting people? How does that work?
Yeah, so I coordinate with our neighborhood services group for the parties and kind of those more.
And who are they? Neighborhood services, is that an Arvada?
Yep, it's a program at the city of Arvada that has been around for a long time doing neighboring activity. We've just never joined up before with our emergency management group to infuse all of that work with preparedness discussions. So folks can contact me directly if they're already interested in disasters and emergency preparedness. Folks can reach out to the neighborhood services group if they just want to have a party. But we're coordinating at the city to make sure that we take advantage of that opportunity to have a discussion.
Big question, do you pay for the party?
Yes, sometimes, yes.
That's the question I got from our group. Well, are they paying for this?
Yes.
Because, you know, parties are expensive. It's one of the things they want to know.
Yeah, we provide grants.
Do you really?
We have a block party trailer filled with tables and chairs preparedness information inside the trailer.
So. Do you cook? Who cooks? Jesse, do you cook? No, nobody? No? No. But there's food, and it's just like a little carnival for the neighborhood. Right. I was trying to explain it to people, and I only saw it on video, so I didn't have a good idea. But the whole idea is get everybody to come, to make it enticing enough that everybody comes and gets the information. And I can't imagine, and in my discussion in my room, a lot of parents said, well, you know, it would probably be a good idea to get young people involved in this. Is that a tenet of the project?
I mean, Teen CERT's definitely a thing that's around.
Teen CERT? Oh, Teen CERT. By the way, that stands for Community Emergency Response Training.
Team.
Yes. Excuse me. Okay, team.
Lakewood is finally getting our feet under us. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we've got a good cadre of volunteers and instructors. And we've been approached by the school district to potentially start bringing this into the schools, and it's just a matter of making it work. And she can probably speak a little bit more as to what Teen CERT's about.
Yeah, and I mean, Teen CERT is essentially just a younger adult doing the CERT curriculum. And just to your point about getting youth involved, I mean, they're the way of the future. Right, we're adults, we're set in our ways. Right. Yeah. And so how can we educate our younger people to, again, I'm going to use empower and them gain their confidence. They want to be heard. And once they're heard, you know, they're wanting to do more. I want to put a plug in for our Regional Youth Preparedness Council. Hi. You know, they're essentially mini-me's in their communities. And
these are all kids.
Yeah, they are from 8th to 11th grade. And so they're ambassadors for us and advocates. You know, they go to their legislators even. They're talking to their school administrators. Really? Yes. You know, the threats that they're facing out there, they're scared.
Oh, of course, yes.
You know,
right. In terms of mass casualty events, right?
And
sure they are.
This type of training really gives them the tools that they need and the education that they need to, you know, take the first step if something was to happen in their school.
Right.
Not just in their neighborhood.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. We actually, Lakewood 8 just did a big series with a bunch of kids on problems in schools and what have you. And what we discovered is that kids generally, teenagers mostly, have a very high level of awareness of what they need to do in a disaster, more so than adults. Although in our group we had a lot of professionals, but even parents agree that their kids had a lot more general knowledge about this than they do.
Yeah, I mean, I joke here that when we do fire drills, I can evacuate a classroom of 5th graders quicker than I can evacuate a building full of adult professionals.
Yeah, because they ask too many questions. Why? Where are we going? Why do we have to do that? I hear this all the time.
Yeah. But yeah, getting them young, and we've trained plenty of younger people in our CERT program too. We've had grandparents that have been so moved by the class that they've come back to another offering and brought their grandchildren.
How about that?
Yeah.
So FEMA's the operational arm of this, right? Christina, I mean, you guys kind of lay the groundwork.
We set the standards and the protocols, and we support the local programs. And I would say when we say operational, they're more of the operational.
They're the boots on the ground,
that's
more
right.
or less.
Yep.
Right?
Strategic.
Yep.
Strategic.
There you go.
And so Christina made a very good point that in the event of catastrophe, it could be 72 hours as long, and we've seen this, even in Colorado, especially during the flooding, it takes a long, because the local emergency responders are overwhelmed. So actually, it is incumbent upon neighbors to help neighbors, and this training would, as Katrina has said, will give them a lot more confidence to jump in and be those people. Right. So how many people would you guess? This was another question we got from our group. How many people have they trained? How many people know about this? Or I think the underlying question was, who's going to help me? I think that was the underlying question.
I can speak nationally. I just looked at the stats. There are at least almost 3,000 CERT teams across the nation, and to date, since the inception of the program, almost 600,000 people have been trained.
Really?
But in terms of across Colorado, I'm not as sure. And so, you know, it's all about gaining that access to the information. And I'm just really excited that you asked us to be here because, as you said, you know, people don't know about this.
No, they didn't know.
And they're also...
And they were stunned, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, when I told them someone was to turn you into a first responder,
yeah.
The room got very quiet, and then it erupted. What?
Right, and really, when we say first responder, it's, you know, the lowercase first responder, right? And trying not to scare them and staying away from that doomsday speak.
Sure.
You know, we talk about planning for the big one, and essentially it's all about how are they planning for their disruptions to their home personally, and then in their community.
Right, and then people would ask me, so, you know, it snows in Colorado, and the good thing about snow as opposed to water is that it just melts generally and goes away. But we have fires, we've had devastating hailstorms, so people would ask me, what kind of catastrophes are we talking about? So I told them that I would ask, so what kind of catastrophes are you talking about? I guess you'd be ready to handle just about anything, but generally are we talking about you know, big wind-driven events, more flooding. I was certainly wildfires, although that's more of an evacuation thing and less of a. But I mean, what kind of disasters would you guess we would be talking about? Unexpected catastrophes.
Yeah, I mean, we really take it from the approach of all hazards. So it doesn't necessarily matter what caused it is that you know how to bounce back from it and take care of the consequences. So if it's a tornado that happens to impact a building and there's injured people, you can do that. If it happened to be a bomb blast or something else that happened, it doesn't matter, you can still respond to it.
Is there a big budget for that? Does Lakewood, does Arvada, does FEMA, who's got the, that was another question. Where does the money for that, where's the grants, where's the money come from for this?
Yeah, so there's some small grant funding available through the region here, federal grant funding that's bid out. So we get a lot of that money, we get a portion of that money spread across the state. That helps to supply the backpacks, the personal protective equipment, some of the training aids that we do, the moulage kits to do the makeup to make it a little more realistic.
What did you say, the what kit?
Moulage, which is so in the scenarios and the exercise that you saw in the footage that we've got, people are done up with bones coming out of their skin and scars on their face. So that's moulage.
I have to say, it was pretty
makeup.
intense. It looked, whatever happened was pretty bad, I have to tell you. Although the group was very good at responding to it, but that's just.
Then from the city side, there's a limited amount of money just to kind of help with refreshments for putting the course on. It's done on a pretty tight budget.
I see.
It's a lot of volunteer time. It's a lot of great work from volunteers.
Oh, I'll bet. I have to ask, how new is the concept? I mean, is this something we've been doing for years, or?
So back in 1985.
Since the Cold War bunkers were built?
Well, I wouldn't say that far, but back in 1985 was when the Mexico and Japan disasters happened, and the Los Angeles Fire Department assisted. And they actually did a study just about the citizens and what they did essentially in those hours after the response. And what they found is that they were on their own. And they responded on their own, and they helped their neighbors and their family members on their own. And so through that, there became this national, cultivation of that type of model on, hey, we need to train our citizens because they're the ones they're the first line of defense. So then in 1994, FEMA adopted this training and developed the training. So it's been around for some time.
I know during the Nimitz Bridge collapse, for example, I covered that as a reporter, and the most lives were saved by other people who were in the accident, rescuing other, and it was kind of that kind of, when I first saw this, I kind of thought about that how many more lives could have been saved in any of some of the horrible things that I've had to cover, how many more lives could have been saved if just people, schlubs like me, were trained, to act faster. And I know you all could probably jump in and do a lot of things that I can't, so now I'm determined to learn more about how to do it. And it was really a fascinating thing. I know there's a solar company in Colorado that says they want to do 1,000 rooftops in Colorado this year. So are you hoping to do 1,000 neighborhoods or 20 neighborhoods, or is there a number on? I mean, how many would you like to do?
Yeah, we have some strategic goals at the City of Arvada. We look at our neighborhoods that are self-reporting strong levels of preparedness versus others that don't feel as confident. And so we're tracking our results, and our goal is to touch every neighborhood in Arvada, either through a block party or a neighborhood improvement grant where they create a muster point for them to meet on clear skies and during disasters, or a CERT volunteer or two from that neighborhood. So we are tracking that, and our goal is to touch every neighborhood.
Wow,
for sure.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to come to a block party. I've not seen one except on video, so I'll keep tabs of you guys, and when you have a good block party, I'll get a hold of Disaster Katrina, and we'll come over, and I'll tell her I know the big swing at FEMA, and this is this is the person who will come later on with the checkbook, but we all need to learn this today. So thank you all for your time. It's just a fascinating program. I wish you good luck with it, and I hope there's a lot of people involved. And we should tell our audience that at the end of this broadcast, we will list the websites that they can go to contact you if they would like to do a block party or do triage or learn how to make a tourniquet in their neighborhood. All those things very important. Thank you all for your time today. I'm so glad you were here today. And thanks to all of you for joining us for the conversation. Let's talk again soon.